Welcome everyone to the Perth SuperSprint review from round 5 of the 2018 Supercars Championship, as I'll be recapping everything that happened over the round for you guys. All the talking points are about the tyres, and you guessed it, tyres, as the Barbagallo track is vicious on tyre wear, as the surface of the track is over 14 years old and it just chews through the rubber of the soft tyres. Teams had to have their thinking caps on to work out the best strategies for the races. The Saturday race saw McLaughlin take another pole position with Waters on the front row, as both Red Bull cars failed to get into qualifying 3 and qualified outside the top 10. A 50-lap race with a compulsory tyre stop saw mixed strategies, as some cars chose to come in early for that undercut advantage and others decided to play the long game and stop later, hoping that the fresher tyres on the car would benefit them at the end of the race. There was drama when we saw cars being punted and turned around because of drivers trying to slow down for the pit entry. Tander spun Courtney around after Courtney made a late call to come into the pit lane and slowed right up on GT, who couldn't avoid him slowing down. And then we had the same thing later in the race with Jamie Whincup and Mostert. As Mostert was trying to pit as well, Jamie didn't realise it and punted the back of Mostert, who also went around. Now I reckon supercars need to look into this, because we can't have cars slowing down on the racing line to come into pit lane, because as we saw, the cars that aren't coming into pit lane will try and get on the throttle out of the corners and drill the back of the cars coming into pit lane. If we look at the circuit, we can see a pit lane road before the last corner, but it's probably more dangerous as we don't want cars to slow down over on the back straight, because that would be worse. My solution is to have a pit lane entry right before the apex of turn 7. This would mean that the cars would have to veer to the very inside of the track, and it would signal that they are coming in and it's also in the braking zone of the last turn, and the pitting cars would turn into pit lane before the apex of the last turn of turn 7. And this wouldn't create the congestion or contact with non-pitting cars. That's my idea, but I still think supercars need to find a better way for the pit entry at Barbagallo Raceway. Back to the racing, and Winterbottom and Van Gisbergen pitted the latest around the lap 30 mark of the race, where they came out buried in the field. But it shows how much tyre wear this circuit has, as both Winterbottom and Shane Van Gisbergen tore through the field, being a second to 2 seconds faster at the end of the race to the drivers that stopped 10 to 15 laps earlier, and they both ended up second and third after being in the mid-pack after their stops. McLaughlin was too strong for everyone and controlled the race out in front to make it 3 in a row. So here is the results: McLaughlin, Winterbottom and Van Gisbergen on the podium, a good drive from Slade in 4th for BJR Racing, and Jamie Whincup finishing in 11th after he received a 5-second time penalty with his contact with Mostert. The Sunday race was a 200km 83-lap race where both Red Bulls locked out the front row in qualifying, and both DJR Team Penske cars were buried as they got knocked out in qualifying 1. There was a bit of aggro at the start where Pye got spun from contact at turn 5, where luckily no one ended up in a bad crash. Golding got punted by his teammate Garth Tander at turn 1, and that brought out the safety car. Everyone in the field took the stop except for Will Davison, and from then on the race was all about tyres and strategy. We had cars pitting at different stages all race whenever the tyres hit a cliff. We had some cars 4-stop and some cars managed to do a 3-stop in the race, and we wouldn't know what the pecking order was until everyone had pitted for the final time. McLaughlin, with his strong pace all weekend, showed that qualifying was just a hiccup as he took home victory, as he was able to do a 3-stopper and keep his tyres from falling away, and has now won 4 on the trot. Reynolds was in the top 3 all race and came home with a strong second, and Craig Lowndes coming from the back row of the grid finishing 3rd. That guy is a freak. So the podium: McLaughlin, Reynolds and Lowndes. Good weekend's recovery from James Courtney to be in 4th, and Shane Van Gisbergen finishing in 5th. But McLaughlin is on a row, and if I was Red Bull I'd be concerned, as they had 2 cars start on the front row, and yet Scotty from P19 still won comfortably, so it's safe to say Scotty is the man to beat again this year, even with the new ZB Commodore. But let's have a look at the Drivers' Championship, and Scotty Mclaughlin is walking away with this championship. He is now 158 points ahead of Shane Van Gisbergen, with Reynolds still in third, and the defending champion Jamie Whincup in fifth, 268 points away now, so it's getting harder for Jamie each round, but it's still a lot of racing to go. Anything can happen over the rest of the season, and the team's championship is heating up with only 12 points separating Red Bull Holden Racing Team and Shelby Power Racing. This is going to be a great rivalry between the two teams again this year. Barbagallo saw the return of the new 3-stage qualifying system, where it aims to split up the field to stop the congestion of qualifying. If you weren't with us for Tasmania, this is how the system works, with now practice playing a part of how qualifying shakes up. So how it works is that the top 10 combined times from practice go straight into qualifying 2. The other 16 drivers then fight it out in qualifying 1, where only the top 6 from qualifying 1 go into qualifying 2 to join the top 10. In qualifying 2, the top 16 drivers fight it out to be in the top 10 as the top 10 advance to qualifying 3 for a top 10 shootout. So it's a bit of a hybrid mix between MotoGP and F1 qualifying. And with it being run the second time, I love this new qualifying format because it has the unpredictability of who is in and who is out of the qualifying stages. It creates more intensity and excitement. Now practice is important, because in practice the driver wants to do a qualifying simulation run to get a good enough lap to secure themselves into qualifying 2 and skip qualifying 1. So practice now means something for the drivers, and it shows us a form guide into qualifying. And as we saw over the weekend, we had some big name drivers fight it out in qualifying 1 for the likes of McLaughlin, Winterbottom, Lowndes, Courtney and more. And then when we roll into qualifying 2, we see the best drivers put in some great laps, as everyone is fighting for a spot in the top 10 for qualifying 3. On the Saturday qualifying, we saw Jamie Whincup and Van Gisbergen struggle to get into qualifying 3 and start outside the top 10 on the Saturday race. And on the Sunday, both DJR Team Penske cars got knocked out in qualifying 1, starting outside the top 16 on the grid for Sunday. It goes to show if they aren't on their game, they will be punished and not make it into the next stages of qualifying, because we have the drivers battling it out in the dying stages to see who will advance and into the next stages. The only thing I would suggest to make this qualifying better is give the drivers an extra set of tyres for qualifying 3, because some guys who were in qualifying 1 had to use up all of their fresh tyres to make it into qualifying 3. And as we saw on the Saturday qualifying, Will Davison made it into qualifying 3 from qualifying 1, but didn't post a lap time in qualifying 3 because he ran out of green tyres for qualifying 3. So if Dunlop gave everyone a fresh set of tyres for qualifying 3, then it would be an even playing field with everyone having a fresh set of tyres for qualifying 3. But this qualifying format is great, and I hope to see it introduced at more rounds next year. So that brings me to the end of the review for the Perth Supersprint. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more reviews of the season as we head to Winton Raceway in Victoria for the next round. Until then, have a good one and goodbye.